New research out this week that there is a tremendously strong link between ADHD and addiction. I myself can massively relate to this. I'm going to talk about it in this video. Guys, it's Matt. I am a compulsive gambler in recovery, and I like to think of myself as your mind and movement mentor here to help you. So this doesn't surprise me when there's links made like this, because I got diagnosed with ADHD, about 4 years ago now. And I'm a thoroughbred compulsive gambler for 20 something years, 25, I think I worked it out last time. I'm turning 41 tomorrow. So, and yeah, pretty much since I was 16. So gosh, quarter of a century. Before I talk about the actual nuts and bolts of it, you know, there'll be brain chemical science, there'll be terminology around dopamine baseline levels, neurotransmitters. I'm sure if you put my brain under one of the screens, you would show all kinds of hyperactivity on any sort of behavior that was perceived to be risky, that kind of thing. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the Paul Merson documentary where they do this with his brain, and even when they're playing like a sort of game of chance with no money involved, you can see he's definitely got increased activity in that area, which is obviously something that is to an extent genetic, but obviously has been corrupted, perhaps for want of a better word, through gambling behaviour. Just an epiphany I had earlier, actually. Start of the Premier League, the weekend just gone, and this is always a challenge for me. My last 3 relapses have all taken place in October, and I believe to a large extent it's because the end of the summer times kind of kicked in, coinciding with the start of the Premier League. And then I've really kind of thought about it for a while, and then that sort of early October time has been my breaking point, I'm sad to say, but not this year, definitely not this year. But it got me thinking, like, there is just such a magic in life just being okay. Not getting too high, not getting too low. Because for sure, I have got the stimulation gene in me to go out and seek pleasure, dopamine, brain chemicals. I've got more of a tenacity to do that than, say, the average person. And, you know, that is to an extent what ADHD is. It is kind of hyperactivity in certain parts, but it's also from imbalance of brain chemicals. And, you know, things that regulate our mood and emotions and such like. And, you know, because I was just thinking, like, there is such a magic with life just being okay. I think this took me a long time to learn. And I think if I'd have truly learned and internalized this at an earlier point, there might not have been as many relapses. Recovery certainly would have been more of a straightforward path with less twists and turns and carnage ensuing. I was in a client meeting earlier and it was boring. It was boring. And my brain started to daydream and think, it's the second half of the week now, Wednesday afternoon, moving close to the weekend. If you bet on the Football Premier League this weekend, that really will be exhilarating. Probably from Friday morning through till Sunday night, that will be an absolute roller coaster. That will take you out of this state you're in now. That will put you in something that is energizing you more, feels like you've got more faculties in your brain, feels like you've got more bandwidth, feels like you've got more lust for life. All temporary things, mind you, but a very addictive state nonetheless, and a very attractive state when you are at a reasonably mundane baseline with not a tremendous amount going on. And it made me think, I mean, I suppose it's a fleeting craving. As a thoroughbred gambling addict for as long as I've been, I'm out of my mind. Here I am 9 months and 3 weeks off a bet, but I'm out of my mind to think that they're just going to diminish. But it does feel attractive. It feels like a pull. And I've made videos on the past of relapse prevention and things like that, and I'm not in some ways taking this craving particularly seriously, because it doesn't feel like a trigger, it doesn't feel like an urge, but it's just worth noticing nonetheless. The more so, just even if it wasn't gambling, just that behavior of that something different to take me away from the monotony of the baseline. And that is the nature of all addictions for sure, but in particular with gambling addiction. But the problem, of course, being it's just not sustainable. Even if I had the most rock and roll weekend, like I say, from Friday through to Sunday, with my brain on fire, adrenaline, endorphins, heart beating out of the chest, where do we go from there? You know, because like the old saying goes in the Gamblers Anonymous Fellowship, one is never enough and two is too many. And that's so, it gets more profound every time I hear that and every time I say that, because knowing myself as I do, it just wouldn't be enough. What happens on Sunday night, I'd be going down the leagues into League One, into whatever else was going on in the middle of the week, next week, purely just to keep me on that train of lunacy that I've started this weekend if I was to. And then there's just such a diminishing return, again, like the nature of all addictions. Even if this weekend was rock and roll, I then can't match that. It only goes one way. I'm trying to match that by increased stake, increased frequency of bet, and it just can't. It's just a mirage at that point. It's just chasing the dragon. So, you know, for those who are struggling with gambling addiction, I realise I say that you know, quite logically and quite flippantly, and it's a hell of a lot easier when I'm out of the cycle now than when you're caught up in the chaos and in the fog. But that is the reality of it, and that's, sometimes you do need some of your logical brain to win out on what's going on. And I think the link with ADHD is very interesting. Like I say, it doesn't surprise me. I feel like, you know, I like to think as fellow ADHDers as a special kind in a good way. You know, they say if it wasn't for, and this is an old wives' tale, how true this is I'll never know, but you know, the people with ADHD like Christopher Columbus that discovered America. You know, I'm not happy to just sit around this campfire with other Cro-Magnon men by a barbecue. I want to go and see what's over that horizon, what's over that hill, what's over there. And it's that kind of, that drive of the brain not being inherently satisfied that leads to a lot of inventions, kind of moving humanity forward, moving society forward. But for sure, addiction is one of the downsides of ADHD, because they really do pair together like a perfect storm. And it made my gambling addiction make sense when I eventually got diagnosed. Because like I say, it is I often say on this channel, so much of my gambling was about putting my brain to use, because I felt like I had almost, whether it was extra creativity or extra energy or extra something that could go somewhere. And then at the same time, it fulfilled a need of escaping from the mundane baseline, escaping from some sort of dysregulated feelings in my body that I didn't necessarily like. Again, that's very common with ADHDers. And then kind of married together with my love for sport, where I could kind of get logical about it, about formations, about teams, about form, about statistics, and kind of feel like my energy was going towards something. And of course, I promised myself all the riches, all the luxury goods, all the special things that I would buy when I made my riches. And the reality is, I've again said on this channel before, when I did win, it was very much about not wanting to spend a penny of it, because that was my gambling fund. That was my money that was going to be recycled into gambling. You know, it would drive me bananas if I would ever blow out a tyre on the car, or, you know, get a car parking ticket, which I'd often get from just frantically dashing up to the bookies 5 minutes before kickoff and not concerning in the world, because wanting to get the bet laid in place in time. But yeah, there was a real feeling of detachment from the real world. which is a real gift and a curse. You know, there's reasons that people gamble. There's something that the addiction does give you, for sure. And often you have to sort of take some time out to work out what that was. And I think for me, that was a deadly combination of kind of escapism from the mundane and feelings that I didn't want to sit with, coupled with excitement and exhilaration to suit my brain. And again, such a perfect storm. So true, if you didn't know I had ADHD, you certainly do now, about the way I go off topic and into tangents with various different, with these videos. I really do struggle to stay on the original topic. But yeah, if you've got any experience of being neurodivergent, gambling addiction, or just thoughts, I'll respond to all the comments on this channel. Love hearing from you guys. If you enjoy the content, please like and subscribe. It helps me reach more people about a topic I am tremendously passionate about, trying to grow the channel to raise awareness and get a message out there, because let's be honest, the trajectory of gambling addiction is very, very worrying. No signs of it slowing down soon by the look of the numbers, and I can only imagine where we'll be in a few years' time. And I don't want people to suffer to the extent that I did, if it's preventable, because I went through a tough time as an understatement. So thank you so much for watching, and I will speak to you in the next video very soon. Take care.